Good morning and a very, very warm welcome for being here at the Living with Grief Masterclass. It takes a special person to come along to this type of masterclass to learn more about grief or to support other people in grief. And so I really commend you on being here, and I'm going to go through quite a lot of content throughout the morning. And so take notes, check in, really connect with the material, and yeah, it's just great to have you here. So let's get into it. Okie dokie. So very, very warm welcome. For those of you I've not met before, I'm Christy Roberts. I'm your facilitator for the day. Now, I've got a number of goals, and one of the reasons why I'm running this workshop is because I'm here to provide education, tools, and practical strategies for coping with grief and for coping with loss. And so, I think the loss and the grief journey is it's not a unique experience. However, so many of us just don't actually know how to feel and how to process our emotions when they hit us. So, I think learning to understand your grief, learning how your grief works for you is a really important step on the way. I'm here to demonstrate ways that you can process your grief, that you can live well with deep emotional pain and trauma. I'm also here because it's my vision and my goal to help over 1 million people on their deepest, darkest journeys to really find that light again. It's in us. It's just sometimes it really gets dampened and often even put out. So how can we get that light back? How can we connect with ourselves, connect with our journeys, and reconnect with that love again moving forward? And I'm here to increase grief literacy around the world, because one thing I learned as I went through my own personal grief journey, which I'll share with you shortly, is that we just don't understand grief. So by going and running these masterclasses and sharing grief education around the world, basically my goal and my vision is to improve grief literacy so that we're more comfortable with the conversation. All right, so just a little bit about me. I think before we jump in, it's good to let you know a little bit about myself. This is not to impress you in any way, shape or form, but it's really just to let you know that you are in safe hands, and that I am the real deal. I do actually know what I'm talking about. So I've worked in human resources and organisational development for pretty much most of my career, over 20 years. I've worked with leaders, I've worked with large teams across the country. In 2016, my team and I were formally recognised for a Leadership Development Award by the Australian Human Resources Institute. That's us there in the middle on the red carpet. We flew in directors and it was all quite a big deal. I've also in 2019, in the top right there in the green, received an Excellence Award for my work in local government. I began formally coaching in 2017, and I founded my business Creating Change back then. So I'm a qualified life coach. I'm a qualified results coach. I am a coach's coach. Now, what that means is many of my clients are in fact coaches themselves, and a large proportion of the work that I do is through my referral network. So it's coaches referring me on to people they know and their clients for that deeper work, the really sort of traumatic grief work that can really keep many people stuck. Because as coaches, for example, what we tend to do is we're very goal orientated, very action orientated and results orientated. So where is it you want to go? What steps do you need to take to get there? And you map out the pathway to get there. But the work that I do, it goes into, okay, well, what's keeping you stuck? Why aren't you taking those actions? And the deeper work, the heart, mind, connection, and just really sort of going that extra layer deeper. I also work with clients worldwide. I'm a certified grief educator with David Kessler. He's I consider to be the world's #1 expert in grief. So I've gone through quite a comprehensive training with him on grief education. I'm also a senior self-directed healing practitioner. Self-directed healing is a fabulous healing modality where we work with deep emotional pain and limiting beliefs. So grief, trauma, anger, anxiety, overwhelm, stress, guilt, shame, addictions, really the really deep, hard stuff. And we process it energetically through the physical body and releasing it energetically. Very, very cool stuff. In addition to being a practitioner, I am the senior trainer. So I train self-directed healing practitioners worldwide. And I'm also a mentor in that space as well. So it's a very cool space to be working in. I have also been a triple O operator a number of years ago, but my focus for my coaching is very holistic. So I'm working with the mind, I'm working with the emotions, I'm working with human behavior, and I'm all about living our best life. How can we live our best life, and what does that even look like, and how do we get there? So it's how can we live our best life in spite of life, like in spite of all the challenges and the stuff that life can really throw at us. So that's a little bit about me. I am committed to providing a safe space for those in grief. And I just want to mention at this point, at the beginning of the training, that given the content of what we're working with today and why you are here, it is very possible that some of this content may trigger you. It may trigger you. So if you feel like crying, I just really want to encourage you to please do. I actually love tears. For me, they're like a gateway to our soul. And if someone is emotional, for those of you that are here, we don't need to do anything, right? We don't need to reach out. We don't need to be messaging them. We don't need to comment, because that can make them uncomfortable. We don't need to feel uncomfortable. We don't need to feel bad or try to fix them. So it's really just about noticing, witnessing, and you can just send them loving intent or loving energy, healing energy, and that can be really beautiful in a group setting like this. So I trust that you are all on board with that. I also want to mention that our triggers just in grief, it's not just sadness. Often we can get quite frustrated. We can feel anger. So just notice that. If you get angry or frustrated by anything that I've mentioned, if it's like, oh, that's not right, how could she say that? Just note that down. Taking notes, just note that down, because when it comes to our triggers are like a map. They're like a map to our healing. They're a map to our pain. And so it's very important to begin to notice those triggers, to get curious about your triggers, and use that as an opportunity to explore what's actually underneath this. What is this really about? And that can be it can be very, very insightful. So use them to guide you, use them to navigate you, because in the grief world, the terrain is very often really rocky and uncertain. And so through those triggers, we can actually find our pathway out. So another way of thinking about it is like a torch. Imagine you've got a torch and it's like there's pain over here. It's really sad, or something's triggered you, or frustrated, angry, whatever it is. Feeling lonely, like it doesn't matter what that trigger is. Shine the torch. It's almost like saying, hey, over here, there's something over here, and shining the torch on it to allow you to just get a bit curious about it. So as a coach, as a healer, as a grief educator, I literally have the best of all worlds. So when I focus and when I work with my clients and in my coaching and my workshops and masterclasses, the focus that I have is very much past, present, and future. It's quite a great space to be, because as a healer, I often work with past. As a grief educator, I'm working in the present. As a coach, I'm focusing a lot on the future, and they kind of sort of interweave throughout each other. So it's a really great blend, and it's very cool because, it's where you can really very holistically work across all the different phases, bringing it all together and just getting that congruence that we need. I understand that in addition to experiencing loss, there are a number of different factors that affect our experience of grief and loss. And they are things like the culture, the way that we're raised, our community, our spiritual beliefs, our religious beliefs, and many other things. So there are a number of different factors that will play a role into an individual's grief. And my role as a grief educator and a coach and a healer, the way that I view this is I meet you wherever you are. So the work that I do transcends cultures, it transcends belief systems, it transcends religions. I'm literally working with you as a person, What are you feeling? Where is it? How can we help support you? I'm not here to judge your belief systems or try to change or convert your belief systems. It doesn't matter what I believe, because this work is relatable and transferable across all those different aspects of your belief systems and experiences. So I do meet you wherever you are. Also, I think it's really important to mention that the responsibility for change actually lies with the griever. I can give grievers information, but ultimately it's up to you to implement that action and to do something about it. I can inform, I can reflect, I can support, but the griever's journey is ultimately their own. It's also worth mentioning that when it comes to grief, you will absorb information as you are able. You'll absorb information as you're able and as you're ready, because what happens in early and acute grief is that we do go into like a shock, a numbness, a denial. And so what our filter and what we can take in is very, very restricted and very limited. So depending on where you're at in your grief will depend on even what you get out of the workshop today. So everyone is on different stages in their grief journey. And so this is about just taking from this what's working for you now and being okay with that. And it'll likely be that in a couple of months or even weeks, you might be in a different place as you move through your grief. And especially if you're doing the work, you'll transition faster. So this is a masterclass that I will run again. It will not be in this format moving forward. It'll be a 1 hour format moving forward. And then I'm going to do a half day paid workshop. But please come back. You can come back. You can redo this. Every time you come, you'll learn something new, do something new, and take something else out of it. So we're covering a lot today. We're going to be talking about grief. We're going to be talking about the grief timeline, tips for grievers. I've got so many tips, not enough time to share them all, but I'm having a really good go getting through as much as I can. Tips for supporting people in grief. As well. We're going to look at how to process deep emotions. So the end of this session, we'll be talking about deep emotional pain. And as I said, I'll be doing a group self-directed healing process. And I've actually got a really special announcement at the end because I'm launching something new. So make sure you stick around for that. If you do have questions, make sure you write them down because I want to honor them and I want to capture them. So write them down, and then at the end of the session, I will close, we'll finish, we'll thank everyone, and then we'll stay on and do questions. Because of the flow, because I'm going to cover so much content, I don't like to interrupt, but I want to honor them, so make sure you write them down. The other thing I want to mention is I have actually just finalised my grief ebook. So all the tips and plus more stuff that's not being taught on this particular masterclass is in this grief ebook, and I'm going to email that out to every one of you that's here today. So you will all actually, let me take a photo of you so I know who's here. All right, smile. I won't post that anywhere, don't worry. Okay, so I'll be emailing that out to you. All right, so I want to pause for a moment and I just want to check in and see why you're here. Why are you here? What brings you here? I know some of you are here with your grief. Some of you are my clients. Some of you are professionals from my network who are here, and coaches, and we have hypnotherapists. We've got many different people in the room that help other people with their grief. And so everyone here wants to learn more about grief, but I'm just curious. So in the chat box, if you could just let me know, are you here for personal, professional? Is there something, a particular grief that you're working with that you feel would be worthwhile to share? So I just want to see who's in the room, why we're here, just so that I make sure I am, addressing everyone in the room and talking to you all. Thanks, Rob. So Rob's here, professional. I'm a business and life coach. I said to him, be really good, because if you've got clients that have blocks and aren't taking the actions that you set them, because as coaches, we're very action orientated, it's good to understand a bit more about grief. Personal, yes, my mother's very frail. Thanks, Ira. So that is, Ira's dealing with anticipatory grief. That's what we call anticipatory grief, the grief before the loss. But there's losses along the way. So Ian, hypnotherapist, learn more about grief. And yeah, it is. It's really important to help and understand your clients when they're grieving, totally, and their clear personal grief. Have knowledge to help others. I love that, Annette. Beautiful. So yeah, it is. It's so important. Danielle, grief. Yeah, my mum passed away 11 months ago. I'm sorry to hear that, Danielle. Viv, also to help my family. I missed the first one. Oh, here, Viv, here for my own grief. My father passed when I was 9, my brother when I was 1. That's a lot. And you wouldn't have even known as a child that you were grieving, but your world would have been shaped around your grief, right? Yeah. I've got everyone. Yeah. Yeah. So Mario sent me a message just saying he's dealing with loss as well. Naomi, I want to be a grief counsellor. Good on you, Naomi. I love that. Studying adolescent counselling. There's been so much grief over the last years. Yes. I lost my Phil also last year. Yeah, beautiful. Very sad. Sonia, professional grief coming up in most sessions, personal also. Yes. Lou, to support you. Thank you, Lou. I think, in the future, Lou and I will most likely collaborate. So it's good for her to come along and see what I'm up to. And just a shout out for Lou, get your pens out, everyone. Lou, do you just want to say what your Instagram page?
My Instagram is at the Grief Project, but it's at _grief_project.
Yeah, so pop that in the pop that in.
Not just to support you, Christy, also to learn more and help my grief journey as well, which never ends.
That's right. Yeah. So I do encourage you all to have a look if you're on Instagram to check Lou out, because she's doing some incredible work. She's quite the artist and getting a really great following there. So thank you. Okay. Let me move my chat box over to there. All right. Let's keep going. So, look, yes, we're here. We have professionals in the room. We have a lot of personal loss. I think, in many ways, I guess, if I was to talk about why I'm here, it's like I don't feel that I chose grief. Grief literally chose me. And a number of you have heard my story, but I do want to talk about my story. So this is my son, Aaron, and on the 14th of March, 2020, he was in a car accident and Aaron died on scene. So Annette knows Aaron. She's holding, yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Annette. So in the blink of an eye, my life literally imploded, like the very foundations of my world shifted, and he was here one moment and he was gone the next. And that's a very traumatic experience for anyone to have to deal with. Life as I knew it irrevocably changed. And I'm talking about one phone call. Like life was great and then bang. And in the blink of an eye. So it has been an absolutely brutal journey, devastating. And this is a road that I will continue to travel and navigate for the rest of my life. Like there's no path out of this. I will experience grief for the rest of my life. And because Aaron will not be here, so I will always miss him. Now that grief will change. And even over it's only been 2 years for me. So in many ways, it's still very early grief that I'm dealing with. It's traumatic. And I mean, words just don't even come close to articulating the pain. But here's the thing, when this happened, I was an experienced life coach. I was already working as a mindset coach. I was felt like I was the master of, extraordinary living, living your best life. But I knew nothing, like literally nothing about grief. Nothing. I'd completed 2 formal coaching qualifications. We're not taught about grief. In my role as a self-directed healing practitioner, I mean, I train people around the world. This is a revolutionary fast. It's a healing modality where we process emotional pain through the physical body. But I have trained psychologists. I have trained psychiatrists. I have trained senior nurses, nurse educators, counselors, healers, hypnotherapists, naturopaths, like coaches and more. And I can say they are typically don't know anything about grief. They're not taught about grief. They don't know how to heal and process deep emotional pain naturally. They do not. The medical model of our world doesn't do this work. So they're not taught about grief. It's not part of our education. It's not part of their education. And it's like grief is this big, massive gap in our dialogue, right? And I don't get it. When it happens to you, there's this big hole. And it's like, seriously, we literally have 100% mortality rate. Like, think about that for a moment. And I know I'm going grim, but think about that for a moment. Like, we will all die. I don't know when, we don't know where, we don't know how, we don't know at what age, but we do know it will happen, which means it is almost certain that you will experience deep grief throughout your lifetime. And the stats that I've seen show that on average, we experience a significant loss every 8 to 10 years. On average, right? Now, I felt absolutely blindsided by my loss and my grief, and I had very little tools to help me. I was working in this space which helped, so I was able to draw on other people. Most people don't even have that. So it's tragic. I have learned many things. I've learned that in life, tragic things can and do happen. I've also learned how precious life is, right? Superficial, time-wasting stuff, it actually frustrates me now. I don't have, Tulu and I were talking about this the other day. Frustrates me. Our life, our time here is so incredibly important. I don't want to waste my time away. And in fact, some of you will know I've actually written a How to Master Your Time, Master Your Life program. And I'm currently creating that and building that into an online program. So watch out for that. Now, we can't change the fact that someone has died or someone that we care about is no longer with us. But we do have choices about how we respond and how we move forward. And how we respond to our grief, it directly impacts our outcome, right? Because if we approach grief as fixers, this is something else that I've learned. If we approach grievers as fixers, so I know a number of you are in the room because you're here to help other grievers and support other people. If we go in trying to fix them, it infers they're broken, right? But people in grief are not broken. They are grieving. They're not broken, they're grieving. So in Australia, in my culture, Australian culture where I've been raised, we've been raised to fix people's pain. Well, at least, let's do this, fix. We're not comfortable with it and we want to help people to feel better. So there's lots of bright siding. There's lots of toxic positivity. There's lots of spiritual bypass. Like, it is all around us. I was out last weekend and the girls I were with were talking about their grandkids. And I just said, I actually get triggered by that conversation because Aaron's not here and I will never have his grandchildren. Oh, well, Adele will have kids. I'm like, you're totally missing the point, and then they change the subject. So I've also learned that grief is a very normal response when someone you care about dies or when you've lost something you love. And most importantly, I've learned how to feel deep emotional pain and how to process trauma. So without learning this, I would not be here in front of you today. I would not be in a position to help other people. And I've learned how to do this in natural, healthy, and holistic ways. And that's what I'm here to share with you today. So this is my boy. And I choose to honor Aaron. I choose to respect my grief. I choose to be kind to myself. I am choosing post-traumatic growth, not post-traumatic stress, right? I'm choosing post-traumatic growth. I am literally using and focusing my energy by using this really horrific experience of losing my only son, Aaron, and I honor him every time I speak, right? Every time I help someone, every tip I share where you think, yeah, that makes sense. Everything you write down, it's going into the brain, it's going into the subconscious, it's going in there. Every time you think, I didn't know that. Oops, sorry, I didn't know that. Or, gee, that's really helpful. You know, I might give that a try. That sounds good. Or, wow, I feel differently about that now. Every time I do that, I'm connecting with Aaron. I'm ensuring that his short life has meaning. I'm remembering him, right? Now, he's unforgettable. He will never be forgotten. And that's a common thing. People worry that their loved one will be forgotten. It's not going to be forgotten. But we need to hold that. We need to carry that for them. So I'm keeping his memory alive. You know, I feel in many ways he's with me all the time, but this is how I find meaning. David Kessler's got a fabulous book, Finding Meaning. Lou, can you type that in the chat for me? Finding Meaning. He's got 2 great books. On Grief and Grieving is another really good resource. I've got these resources written at the back of the ebook that I'm sending through to you. But every time it's how I'm finding meaning. Now, we all do this different, but this is what drives me to get out of bed in the morning, because it's tough. It's not easy to do this work, but I do it. Now, we all do this differently, and I realize that my pathway is not typical, but for me, it makes sense. Like, it feels right. I was already working as a coach. I was already doing this sort of stuff. Now I'm just taking it to a completely different level. So for those of you that are grieving, which is most of you in the room, part of your journey is to find ways that you can connect, find ways that create meaning for you, that feel right for you. And as I said, if you're not sure, this is a fabulous book, Finding Meaning. It's award nominated, the only grief book in history that's received awards. Fabulous book. So I guess to sum up, I choose how I respond. I choose to empower myself. I choose to understand my grief. I choose to continually process my pain. I choose to show up and serve others. I choose to build Aaron's legacy, and I choose to bring him with me on my journey. Now, it doesn't mean it's okay. It will never, ever, ever, ever be okay. There's no reason for his senseless death. There's no normal way for a griever to grieve, right? But I just really encourage you to consider how you can honour your loved ones and how you can find ways to bring them with you on your journey. Yeah. And I have one more photo because I just couldn't leave it out. This is my boy. For me, it's like Aaron is literally the angel on my shoulder. It's the right shoulder for some reason. I actually feel his energy there. And we all have different belief systems, and that's okay. The grief work is about finding what feels right for you. I don't care what people's belief systems are. I literally will meet you wherever you are. So I often find myself now, I refer to him for guidance. What would Aaron say about this? What would Aaron want me to do? And I listen, and I kind of let it drop in. I know beyond a doubt he would be super proud of both myself and his sister Adele. And, that kind of helps me feel proud. So I choose to believe that Aaron is my superpower. He's like my key of what gets me out of bed. And I use this loss for him and my love for him to really drive me to be a better person. So for those of you that are experiencing loss, how can you use that to drive you to be a better person and connect with that? And do your best to strive towards living a good life and living a happy life. I saw a quote this morning. It was, what was it? Something about there's a difference between being happy and avoiding being sad. I thought, yeah, there is. There's a difference between being happy and avoiding being sad. Okay, so let's move on. So what is grief? So grief by definition is the loss of something. Grief in its purest form is an expression of love. So if you think of it in that way, that's my favorite definition. Grief is love. Grief in its purest form is love. And when we lose someone or we lose something we love, we will grieve. We just will. It's inevitable. Now, grief has so many faces. There is death, of course, but there's so many more. ways that people can grieve. And this is what is really misunderstood. People don't need to have lost someone they love to come to this type of workshop. There's so many different forms of grief. So there are relationship breakdowns, there's betrayal, there's divorce. And this is just some, there's so much more. Severe health, illness, disability, diagnoses, losing a job, a career change, redundancies, changes in your business, losing your home and your belongings. How many people are affected by grief at the moment in the floods? It's devastating. There is so much grief in the world, right? Miscarriages and infertility is not given nearly enough consideration and support, not even close. There's significant losses. A beloved pet, you know, there's significant losses. And for some people, I have a client who's infertile and she just lost her dog. Now, her dog was her baby. It's a big loss, traumatic, really, really big. So today I am focusing my conversation around the grief when someone we lose dies, when someone we love dies, right? But I just want everybody to understand that when I'm talking about grief, it's actually applicable, this work, to all forms of grief. Okay? So you can make that relatable to yourself and your circumstances, whatever your circumstances. Grief is a unique experience for everyone. Everyone will grieve different. Everyone's experience of death is different. Every person is unique. Every relationship is unique. Spouses, siblings, family members, they will all grieve differently. Work colleagues, friends will all grieve differently. There is no right, there is no wrong here. But what we need to understand is that we do need to understand that other people's grief will actually be different to ours. It will. Also, grief hurts. It hurts. It literally hurts physically. It hurts mentally, like a blow. It still blows my mind. My mind still hasn't caught up. It's past 2 years now. I'm a mindset coach and my mind has not yet, doesn't quite get it, right? It does, but it doesn't. It's a long road. It affects us emotionally. It affects us spiritually. It affects us energetically. It affects us in so many different ways. Now, I just want to talk briefly about the physical symptoms of grief. It increases inflammation in our body. It increases blood pressure. It increases the risk of blood clots. Health problems that you already have, they can worsen and it can cause new ones. Like it literally, grief can batter our immune system and it leaves us depleted and it leaves us vulnerable to infection and vulnerable to disease. There is a condition called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. I've been practicing that. Are you impressed? Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. It's also known as broken heart syndrome, and it's also known as stress syndrome. And so I had this, which is why I'm including it. What happens in trauma is there's a disruption into the blood that pumps into one of the sections in your heart, and it actually mimics the effects of a heart attack. So I was getting irregular heartbeats, and it was really, really bizarre. I'd go to bed at night and it was really concerning. And I actually ended up with this pain spreading through my chest. It was full on. Now it does pass, it is temporary, but if anybody you know especially in acute grief, it's usually the early acute phase, is experiencing any heart trouble, they need to go to the doctor. But I know people who have done this and they're like, oh, you just got anxiety, right? Because they're not taught about grief. So that's why I think it's important to be aware of this stuff. Always better to get yourself checked. Don't think, oh, it's temporary. Get yourself checked. Other symptoms are nausea, loss of appetite, binge eating. It can go either way. Toothache. I had a severe toothache, and when I went to the dentist, I was clenching, and I still am. I still have to unclench my jaw from stress. But these are things that you don't think about, right? It can affect your digestion, your bowels. You can get irritable bowel syndrome, sleep problems, depression, anxiety, loneliness. Loneliness is massive. Emotional overwhelm, suicidal thoughts. I work with a lot of people who have suicidal thoughts. It is not uncommon, especially in early grief, especially in that real sort of denial stage when you are literally shocked and numb. It's not, this is important, it's not necessarily that you or the person wants to die. It's more about how difficult it is to keep living. I remember backing out of my driveway to go grocery shopping. Groceries is a massive trigger for grievers. And thinking, why am I even here? Like, what is the point if my son is not here? I don't even know if I can do this life without him. Now, I wasn't suicidal, but I get it. I get it. It's big. So it's not uncommon for people to sit in that space and have suicidal thoughts. Now, I do want to say, if you are in that space, or if you know anyone who's in that space, please get them to reach out, because self-directed healing is really powerful in that space. Every single person I've worked with, they'll come into the session and we process it. And by the end, they don't want to die anymore. They actually have found that zest to live again. So that's probably, the most powerful work that I can do. When it comes to people who attempt suicide, another thing that's really, I've done mental health first aid through Mental Health Australia. And it's not necessarily that they want to die. It's just they're trying to escape their pain. So people who attempt suicide and do not succeed, if you would call it that, they just are trying to escape their pain. It's more that they don't know how to live. So it's very, very important work to really step in there if you know anyone in that space. So when it comes to grief, when you are continually grieving for a really long period of time, what happens is a person's risk for that long-term health, it increases. So we're more susceptible to things as time goes on. That's why it's so important to do this work. This is why I'm so grateful that each and every one of you have taken the time to be here today to learn about grief, because it will help other people and it will help yourself to process and move through faster, because the longer you're in that, the harder it is, So in grief, we often feel lost. We often feel alone. We often feel misunderstood. There is very often guilt. Guilt is, David Kessler will say, guilt is 95% of the work. The what ifs, the if only, if we had done something differently, what we did do, what we didn't do, what we haven't said, what we did say. We wonder if we could have done something differently. And in doing that, what we're doing is we're actually judging ourselves and we're judging our grief. We're not doing it right. We shouldn't be crying this much, shouldn't be so angry. Why is it taking me so long to feel normal again? Why can't I just get moving? They're all forms of judgment. You're judging where you should be to where you are. So the good news here is, who wants some good news? Is that all? Come on, we want some good news. Now, what gets thrown out of whack during the grieving process? It actually can, in fact, get back on track. It is absolutely doable. It is totally possible to get yourself back on track. Yeah. It might not be the track that you were expecting. It might not be the track that you wanted, but it is totally doable. Nice to hear, isn't it? And just because we've lost someone significant to us, it doesn't mean we have to get stuck in our grief. Like, we can most definitely still live a life that's full of passion, that's full of meaning, that's full of purpose. It's totally, totally doable. So that's the good news. Now, I want to talk a bit about the emotions in grief, because they can be very varied. They can move through from trauma, grief, despair, anger, shock and numbness, sadness, depression, relief, right through to inspiration, and anywhere in between. And it's like a pendulum swinging. You imagine a pendulum swinging. It can be any one place at any, like it can just be anywhere. It's like literally all over the place. Now, this is what I mean. It can be anywhere, and it can be messy, and it can be all over the place. Grief is not linear. It's just not. It's like a roller coaster, right? With the bendiest and the highest and the lows, and it's all over the place. So you can be feeling grief one minute, sadness the next, inspiration. You can be feeling love. You can be feeling like you miss them. You can be feeling really angry. Like it can be all over the place. And it can be several things all at once. It's actually a bit confusing, like your head, your head, heart. It's quite a crazy thing, but it is typically all over the place. Now, when it comes to trauma is when we have too much for our brains to handle. So another way to think of trauma is heightened emotional response, right? Now, every trauma has grief. Every trauma has grief within it, but not every grief has trauma. There are many people who pass and they've lived a beautiful life, and it's a celebration, and it's just follows the natural order of life, But when it comes to trauma, it's things like sudden death, unexpected death, accidents, homicide, suicide, overdose, terminal diagnoses. And that trauma, it can show up in many different ways. It can be panic attacks. It can be anxiety. People can label it PTSD. Not a fan of labels, because that's just emotion that they haven't found a way to process it. But it can be like flashing images and symbols. There can be a disconnection. It's almost like we need to come around and just pick up all the fragments and put it back together, and process that pain. So I would suggest, if you are experiencing trauma, once again, reach out, because self-directed healing is really powerful in this space. Now, I'm going to talk briefly about the grief timeline. I often will get asked, how long am I going to grieve? Well, it's a common question in grief. But the answer is how long is the person going to be dead? Because if they're going to be dead for a long time, you're probably going to grieve for a long time. Yeah. The grief will change over time. Let me be clear. It doesn't mean you will always grieve with intense pain. It just means that, over time, it will shift, it will change, but there will always be that loss, that grief, because your person is not there. So this is a quote out of the Grief Recovery Handbook that I quite liked. The concept that time heals is probably responsible for more heartache than any other single wrong idea in our society. Yeah. And the terrible part is it's not actually true, right? It is a falsehood that's been passed down from generation to generation. Time doesn't heal. It's what we do with the time. So in grief, there is no timeline. No two people will experience grief in the same way. Okay, so let me talk about this a bit more. In saying there's no timeline in grief, there are timelines that will help you gauge interventions. Okay, so these are the timelines that I use to help gauge interventions. So let me go through them first, and then I'll talk about what I mean in a bit more detail. So anticipatory grief. So Ira's mentioned anticipatory grief this morning. Her mum is here, but she is very frail. So this is the grief that we feel before someone dies. And then when our loved one dies, what happens is we enter what we call the acute phase. Now, this can last anywhere between 1 month, 3 months, 9 months, a year. Like it's different for everybody. And the circumstances around the death will make a difference to the acute phase, but also you as a person, the people around you, there's many things that can complicate our response to death. So the acute phase is when you are in the worst pain. It's when you're in the real depths. And it feels like there's no bottom. It feels like there's no end. It is pure survival to get through your day. Then early grief, the first 2 years typically. And then what happens is then after time, our grief begins to mature. And I've noticed this a little bit in myself. Recently, I've noticed it starting to shift. And it's not so much now when the memory of Aaron comes in. Sometimes It's interesting because sometimes it's not like a really deep grief and loss and despair. It's like a love burst, right? Write that down. It's like a love bubble. So it'll be like, it'll come up and then Aaron will shoot into my mind and then I feel love, but I feel loss around that love. You know, I miss him. It's a love bubble. So it's kind of shifting. So the intensity shifts, it kind of changes. And I'll say this a few times throughout this training. It's like our journey through grief. It's kind of through the pain towards the love. And I'm starting to appreciate that and see that now. But oh my God, it's a tough gig, guys, as many of you know. So immature grief, it kind of starts to change, but it doesn't really follow a timeline. But what happens is just the intensity, the frequency of those triggers, they'll lessen. And it just changes. It just shifts and changes over time. So this is when I was talking about intervention. So let me share, this is a good example of an intervention. When I talk to someone or a client tells me they're driving 2 kilometers out of their way to get to work every day because they're triggered by the hospital where their loved one died, I would need to know, when did they die, right? Now, if they're in early acute grief, like if they're in their first 3 months or 6 months, I'd just say, great, okay, you just do what you need to do, right? I'd encourage them to drive out of their way and take care of themselves. But if it was 3 years, I'd suggest we might need to have a look at that, right? Now, understand with COVID, this type of situation can be different because we haven't, especially in Melbourne, we haven't been out in society, right? So we haven't had to deal with a lot of those triggers and going to places. So I know for me, in some instances, this sort of stuff's been prolonged. You know, it's 2 years. If I get invited up to Sassafras for coffee, I can't go up that road because Aaron died on the tourist road. So, you know, because I haven't had to do that, I haven't processed that yet. So, you know, it just takes time. Another one is shopping, groceries. Oh my God, groceries so hard for so many grievers, bumping into people, seeing children, seeing couples, if you've lost a spouse, seeing an elderly lady like your mum, being reminded of them, not having to buy food that you would normally buy, seeing things that they like on the shelf. It is literally trigger after trigger after trigger. One of Aaron's friends works in a grocery store and he had a massive meltdown in the biscuit aisle because he saw the jam fancies. I kid you not. Him and Aaron had a joke about jam fancies and they had to ban him from working in that aisle. And that was the right thing to do. That was a sensible decision in the beginning because it was triggering him. When someone's shopping in the next town, this happens rural a lot. You know, if it's been 3 months and they're shopping in the next town for fear of bumping into someone, if it's 3 months, I'm like, okay, great. You do what you need to do. But once again, if it's a couple of years, I'd be wanting to dive a bit deeper into that because there'll be stories around that in their minds that they're telling themselves, and they'll be increasing the suffering around those stories. And what happens is your world can get very small. So it's about, you know, living fully and doing the grief work. Now, this is a model I love. It's called the Tompkins model of grief. And it's, you know, it says there on the slide, the size of our grief doesn't change over time. What happens is we grow our lives around our grief. So people tend to think that grief will get smaller and smaller over time. I thought that before I experienced grief, but it's actually not true. What happens is over time, we learn to integrate that grief moving forward. And over time, we literally build a life around the grief. So I've come up with this metaphor of the wishing well, which I love. Because it explains it quite well. So our work is to learn how to integrate that grief, how to find the meaning so that we can actually learn to live well with our grief. So let me show you. In acute grief, so the very first stage, when it's just happened, when it's big, when it's survival mode, you can imagine that the water in this well is your emotions. right? The water in the well is your emotions. And when grief hits your life, we are literally consumed by our grief, right? So there's a barren landscape. The grief is everything. It's all consuming, right? That's acute grief. Now, what happens over time in early grief, we learn ways to fill and pull up that bucket of water, the emotions, and we water the garden around us, right? So we learn ways to feel what we need to feel. We learn ways to express ourselves. We learn ways to cope with the grief over time. And basically what we're doing is we are emptying the bucket. We are pulling the water, the emotions out of the well, and we're tipping it into the garden. So we are literally tending to our grief. We are tending to the garden, and we are tending to ourselves. And what happens is we water this garden around us. Over time, the garden will begin to grow. Yeah. Then in mature grief, if we are tending to our grief in healthy, resourceful ways, we will create a beautiful garden. Eventually, over time. But the key here is that the grief doesn't disappear. The well is still there. So you might imagine that as time goes on, there's a beautiful landscape garden with a well in the center, and the size of the well hasn't changed, right? The grief is still there, but around this well, you've built a beautiful life. You've built a garden. You've tended to the garden. You've built a beautiful landscape. You've tended to your grief. So you can build a beautiful life around your grief. But the message here is it doesn't just happen. You know, time doesn't heal grief. It's what you do with that time that makes a difference. That's why it's so important to your grief. Because let me tell you, if you're not tending to your garden, if you're not feeling your emotions, if you're suppressing them, if you're avoiding them, if you don't know what to do with them, if you're not reaching out for help if you need help, what happens is you will stay stuck in a barren landscape. You will stay stuck in the suffering. You will stay stuck in the guilt, the shame, the sadness, and the stories. Your grief will still be there disproportionately to your potential and to your capacity for living a full life. So the life around your grief will not flourish. Your grief is consuming and the plants don't grow. All right? Your life doesn't grow if you're not watering the garden and if you're not tending to your grief. I can see a number of you nodding, so I'm thinking this is landing. Yeah. It's a really great model. So just remember, our grief doesn't change over time. It's what we do with the time that makes the difference. Yeah. It's whether we tend to the garden, healthy, resourceful ways. So that's the Tompkins model of grief. I loved it when I saw it. It really hit home for me, really resonated. Yeah. All right. So let me move on. So tips for early and acute grief. So hold on to your seats, guys, because I'm going to slam through these. But do know in the grief ebook that I'm going to be emailing you, I have captured them, but I haven't captured the descriptions of them. I've just got the bullets, right? So how's everyone going with all this? Good? Great. All right. So when it comes to grief, you know, it is important to engage in your grief. Now, I know every single one of you here that's grieving, you are what I call a courageous griever because you've showed up today. I had double the people registered, but you are the people who have showed up, you know, and we're having the conversation. And the more you learn this stuff, the more you help yourself, the more you help other people. But when it comes to grief, I'm a great believer that you actually really need to wrestle with it. You know, your grief needs to be wrestled with. You don't want it to own you. Yeah. You don't just want to be a victim of it. You know, you want to be a courageous griever. You want to engage your grief in a powerful way. So what does that actually mean? You know, it just means that you want to notice your wins. You know, in early acute grief, getting out of bed is a win. Showering in the morning is a win. Having breakfast, something healthy to eat, remembering to eat, noticing what you're eating, you know, these are wins. And so we want to engage that grief in a powerful way that really helps us get to the love. You know, we don't want the suffering. We need to engage in the grief so we can find the love bubbles. We want to get, that's where we want to get. Now, please understand, neurologically, we are wired, we are negatively wired. And I know I've worked with some of you here before. I know you know this, right? It is so much easier to notice what we haven't done, you know, than what we have done. But this stuff matters. So really celebrate those wins. Coming to a grief masterclass, it helps. Joining a support group, it helps. Talking to other grievers makes a difference. Doing the grief activities, it helps. Getting a coach helps. All this stuff makes a difference. Now, here's what I learned, and this is what I wish I knew in those first few months and weeks of grief. So accept and ask for help. People like to feel that they're doing something to help you, because people feel helpless when you're grieving. Drop-offs, pickups, groceries, cooking, cleaning, you know, in the very early stages, arrangements for the service. Even just sitting with you if you don't want to be alone. You know, it does make a difference. So we tend to get very independent. Not everybody. I'm very independent. It's difficult for me to ask for help. So I've really had to sort of embrace that more and be more comfortable with that. But, you know, and this is, everyone's on their own journeys, but definitely reach out and accept help, ask for help, because people don't know what you need. They don't know what you need. Only you know what you need. And sometimes you don't even know what you need. And that's where it can be helpful to work with someone to work through that. Some of these sound very simple, but they're not. Not simple. Drink lots of water, right? Tears, shock, it actually dehydrates you. Now, I know it sounds simple, right? But let me share with you. In the beginning, I found, and my daughter was the same, Adele, with our shock, we couldn't remember to drink. We were severely dehydrated. We could not remember to drink. Every single time I get, because I get messages, and Lou, you need to share this too. When people come through and they ask for help, if it's in that first sort of week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm like, drink lots of water, drink lots of water, drink lots of water. We actually got Adele's friends on board, and through Snapchat, they would just send us images of them drinking and cups of water. And so at all random times of the day, and you'd get a Snapchat and you're like, oh yeah, okay. And then that would force me to go and have a drink of water until we could get to a point where I said, it was about 3 months. And I said to him, oh, I think we're good now. Bless her friend Harry was sending us, you know, about 5 a day. He was brilliant. Totally on board. But for him, because he was a friend of Aaron as well, that was a way he could engage with his grief, because he knew he was helping us. You know, so people are happy to help. It can sound quite inane, but it's very important. And that, not drinking, let me tell you, it leads to other health issues. It led to many different health issues. I can speak to that personally. So it's very important. Also, eat healthy foods. So once again, some people will binge eat, some people will lose their appetite. So it's about focusing on really nourishing foods and superfoods. I was so out of it, like my whole body, my mind was smashed. I lost 5 kilos in that first week. I was forcing myself to eat bananas because I knew I needed the strength. But, you know, I don't even know, like I was still eating. I don't even know what I ate, but I know I was eating because I couldn't cook. I didn't have the mental capacity to do anything. So, you know, let people drop off meals. It was trickier for me because we were in COVID. We were going into COVID. So I wasn't getting the meals that most people get, but really focus on those superfoods, focus on the healthy foods. So have a shower. Once again, it sounds very simple, but grief is heavy and it's a struggle to get out of bed some days. I spoke to a lady in London, I think it was last month, who lost her daughter by suicide. And she said that it took her over a year to get out of bed. over a year to get out of bed. It's a struggle, right? So you'll probably feel better if you can at least get up. So anyone that you know that's in deep grief, just get up, have a shower, brush your teeth. You can go back to bed. Go back to bed because you need your energy. It's exhausting. But if you can get up and have a shower and brush your teeth, it does make a difference. Have healthy boundaries around visitors. And what I mean by that is no is a complete sentence. You can say no. You know, I would say 80% of people are people pleasers, maybe more. We don't know how to say no. We just think we've got to do the right thing, right? So only see people who are helping you. This is about reducing the noise, because especially in the acute phase, usually you'll get a lot of messages and people popping around and flowers. It's busy. It's really, really busy. People will feel drawn to reach out to you. But in acute grief, you need every ounce of your energy that you can muster to get through your day. So don't waste it unnecessarily. If people show up and unannounced, I had this, people show up unannounced, get someone else to answer the door or just say thank you. I had a girlfriend who actually lost her daughter 3 weeks after Aaron died. Her 13-year-old little girl died in her sleep. She had a seizure. Brutal. And she had one of the school mums that she didn't really know very well turning up at the door, but she kept turning up unannounced. And then she was crying, and my friend was supporting her. And I'm like, no, you got to stop that. That's not okay, right? And so, but this is what happens. People turn up with good intention, but they're not coping with their own grief. And then you can end up in a supporting role. So it's really, really challenging. If people show up unannounced, get someone else to answer the door, just say thank you. It's not a good time for me right now. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. You can just say no, thank you, right? To any request that doesn't work for you. And if they've got a problem with that, you know what? That's their problem. It's not your problem. Don't take it on. Answer messages when and if it suits you. Now, we live in a digital world. We are connected 24/7. Put your phone on Do Not Disturb. You can set your settings in your phone for Do Not Disturb from whatever time you want, and you can allow your nearest and dearest to still message, even if you've got Do Not Disturb on. You can do all that on your phones today, right? You'll be bombarded with messages. You'll be bombarded with sympathy, love, support, very well-meaning, but you've got to remember to put yourself first. Don't worry if you're not replying. Don't push yourself to keep up. It's a struggle. It'll drain you. I was struggling with it because the messages were coming through, and I kind of sat there. It's like, if it's not helping me, leave it. It can wait. It can wait. When you feel like it, when I felt like it, when I came up for air a couple of days later, I'd send a heart emoji. Thank you. That was enough, you know. I believe that normal etiquette doesn't apply in early grief. Doesn't apply. You don't have, and if other people don't get that, bad luck. You don't have to return calls just because someone called you. You don't have to write back to everyone straight away just because they've messaged you. Release yourself of that burden. It's not, you know, if it upsets anyone, like I said, bad luck. That's their problem. Another thing that I found really useful is to focus on micro moments. Focus on micro moments. So when grief is very overwhelming, if there's panic, anxiety, overwhelm, if you're struggling to breathe, that's a very common thing in early traumatic grief. It's actually hard to breathe. You get very breathless. So even breathing in air is hard. That's very normal. So focusing on these micro moments can really make a difference. And this is about slowing down, right? This is about really focusing. So mindfulness, little moments. So focus on the little moments. I'm going to encourage you to pop in the chat box ways that you focus on the micro moments. And as you're doing that, I'm going to watch as you do that. I'm going to share some ways that I focus on micro moments and that have helped me. So going outside, appreciating the color of the petals in a flower, smelling the grass, watching the bees in the flowers, feeling the sun on your face, the breeze on your cheek, the leaves blowing in the trees. You know, if you're near the ocean, just watch the waves rolling and breathe in the air. And this is really important because it grounds you and it reminds you that you're alive. It reminds you that you're living. Yeah. So let me look. What have we got? Walks, 100%. Sitting in the garden, noticing the movement, going for a walk. So Mario, your messages are coming directly to me, not to everyone, just so you know. Ian, meditate, beautiful. Tapping. Yeah, Ian does tapping. Annette does tapping too, Ian. Music, gardening, quiet coffee outside, beautiful, Viv. Yes, gardening. Oh my God, that was my savior in COVID. Naomi, breathing deep and slow. Butterflies, yes. Music, yes. Writing, yes. Focusing on out breathing, yes. So this is important. Focusing, Mario's commented that. In anxiety, breathing in less, so the out breath is longer than the in breath. Yeah, so you breathe in, maybe breathe in for 4, out for 8. Doesn't matter what the count is, but an out breath longer than an in breath, that can help, especially if you're struggling to breathe. Focusing on the out breath, definitely staying with the breath. Yes. Stamping my feet. Yes. Walking barefoot. Yes. Cold tile grass. A hot bath. Beautiful. Yeah. EFT too. Yes. So that's what I mean when I say micro moments, slow it down. I remember my psychologist, I'm like, I don't even know. My brain was so fragmented. I just didn't even, and she's like, micro moments. And she explained that to me and I started doing that and it did make a difference. Okay. Connecting with nature, you know, as Rob just said, walks in nature, smelling the air, taking off your shoes, swimming in the ocean. I would swim in the ocean and I'd walk in the ocean and it was like a trigger for my grief because every time I did something that made me feel alive, it actually reminded me that Aaron was dead. Every time I went for a bike ride and I felt the wind on my face, I would have a massive meltdown. And I ended up having to wear sunglasses. I avoided it for a long time. And then I ended up wearing sunglasses and realizing, well, it was stopping me from exercising because when I went out into the air and felt the nature and everything, and I connected with being alive, it was a trigger. This is where it's really tricky, right? But it's just working through that. It does remind you that life goes on outside your grief. Another thing is don't give away and clean out belongings. Now, clearly at some point you need to go through the belongings and you need to do that. I'm talking about, this is the tips for early grief, that really acute phase. There's no rush for this stuff because what happens, and this happened for Adele and I, we were going to clean out Aaron's room. Like 2 days later, she wanted to tidy it and we were booking it in. And I reached out to a lady called Zenith Virago. She runs the Natural Death Care Centre in Byron Bay. She's a phenomenal woman. And I spoke to her a couple of times in that very first week. And she explained to me, because I was talking about cleaning out Aaron's room and how Adele was in a rush to do that. And I wasn't sure how I felt. And she said, if you can slow all that down, she says, what's happening is you've gone into shock. And by doing stuff, it's a natural response to wanting to find some control in an uncontrollable situation. So it can be almost like a knee-jerk response, that clearing out the stuff. So, you know, it is important to understand that once you've done it, it can't be undone. So in those very early stages, if you can hold, now clearly some people need to do that straight away. For example, if a parent's house needs to be sold, if you need the money because you've got to rent out a room, you know, there's different things. But if it can be put aside, if you can, if you're not sure, put stuff aside, you know, see if you can store it somewhere. But if you don't have to, it is better to wait as much as you can. I mean, I know from personal experience, I am so incredibly grateful that I spoke to Zenith and that she gave me that advice, because in the following months, it was incredibly comforting to be able to go into Aaron's room, to lie on his bed, to smell his pillow, to be around his things. It helped. It was massive. So I would go in there just to help me grieve, you know, and to feel connected to him. And so it's much kinder, it's much gentler if you can really slow this down and take your time. Once you wash their things, their smell is gone. And that's one of our 5 senses. So that is a way that we can connect with them while our mind's trying to play catch up with what the hell's just happened. Right. So, you know, it's taken me time, but over time I've done that as I've been ready, as I've been able to cope, you know, bit by bit. I've worked on that. Another thing that's really powerful is to move your body, because exercise, energy, shifting energy in your body, stretching, it helps to move some of this heavy energy, heavy stuff in your body, even if you don't feel like it, especially if you don't feel like it. You know, one day I made myself go for a bike ride and I felt heaps better afterwards. You know, swimming, I was avoiding it. And then when I finally went, and plus we're in COVID as well, because I used to swim a couple of kilometers a week. And then when I went like a year later or something, I had a massive meltdown in the car on the way there, massive meltdown in the car park, like it was traumatic. And what I realized was I felt like life was going on, you know, but afterwards I just felt so much lighter, so much better. And then you wonder why you didn't do it sooner, you know. So it's hard to do this stuff, but honestly, the rewards on the other side. So that's what I mean by being a courageous griever. It's having the courage to do those things that are really, really challenging. So if you're feeling yourself blocked, that's where this work really helps. Another thing is reaching out for support. You know, when you talk to people who understand grief and people who have had similar experiences, it really, really makes a big difference. You know, I regularly receive phone calls from newly bereaved, people who have been referred through to me, people who I don't know. And it helps them to talk to someone who actually gets it. I don't understand what they're experiencing. I don't even understand what another bereaved parent is feeling, because our grief is different, but I do understand grief. And so they don't have to, when you talk to someone else who kind of gets you or who understands grief, it's like you don't have to pretend you're okay, because we have to put on this okay mask for the world. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. But I can share my knowledge, I can witness, I can normalize the pain, I can point people towards resources. It's made a massive difference for me to be able to speak with Zenith. As I've said a number of times, she's had extensive experience of death and grief. She understood the magnitude of what I was experiencing, and she could answer my questions. And it really helped guide me in a number of different areas where literally I had no idea. Also, get professional support. So if you are reaching out for professional support, make sure they're grief informed and experienced. They have to be grief informed and experienced, because people will say, oh, no, I went to a counsellor, it didn't help. Well, they probably weren't grief informed or grief experienced, right? I know from my years of experience as a coach, I am the senior self-directed healing practitioner trainer I train practitioners worldwide. I train psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, coaches, nurses, like senior medical staff, healers. And I can tell you, they do not understand how to process deep emotional pain. So take your time, inform yourself. I spent days ringing around to get the right person for me. I literally spoke to them and worked my way through until I found someone that was like, yeah, she gets it. You know, it's important. Your life is important. Your world is important. Your grief is important. So make sure they understand grief. And I love this. You wouldn't go to a podiatrist to fix a sore tooth, would you? Right? So make sure when you get help that it's the right help for you. That's a good one, isn't it, Lou? I made that up. But it's so true. You just wouldn't. Another thing that's really powerful is to join a grief support group. Very powerful to be around other people who are bereaved. There's a real sense of kinship in belonging to this group that nobody wants to belong to. Right? So be around people who have experienced deep loss. And this is about finding the right group. You know, what's a good fit for you? Because we're all different. Majority of groups out there are quite basic, and you literally go in and you can just talk about how you're feeling, and then you witness how other people are feeling. So there's no grief education, there's no coaching, there's no activities. It's not guided towards really healing. It's not guided towards the future. You know, it's literally about witnessing your pain, which is incredibly powerful and helpful. But for many, it's not enough, and there's better options out there. So I do have a really exciting announcement at the end, but I'm not going to wait. I am launching an online grief support group. So I'll go just tell you that now. And I'll tell you a bit more about that. Yes, I'll tell you a bit more about that at the end. So I can't wait. But this is not like other groups. This is not like other groups. This is grief education. This is coaching. This is healing. This is activities. So I'll tell you more about that at the end. Other ideas, find things that are restorative to you. So Sonia, you mentioned music, you know, dancing, music. It's very powerful to connect and to move emotion. So if you're sad, play sad music and lean into your grief and allow yourself to feel that pain, allow the tears to come, feel the grief through your body. Really powerful. If you're angry, be angry, find angry thumping music, you know, find anger songs and be angry as you're moving. You know, you can get a punching bag, punching, but feel the anger in your body, feel the grief, feel the despair, feel the panic, feel how frustrated and terrified you are of your life. You know, so this is about connecting with what you're feeling while you're moving. Yeah. Other ideas, cooking. You know, everyone's different. This could be your soul space, faith, prayer, religion, you know, but don't go to your religion as a spiritual bypass. And I'm happy to talk about that later if anyone's got more questions. Got to be very careful that we're not avoiding our grief and bypassing our pain to get to the gratitude and the prayer and the faith and the religion, right? Because what will happen is it'll surface down the track. 5 years, 10 years, it doesn't go away, it gets stuck in your body. Yeah, it's a real thing. It's called spiritual bypass. Also, art. Our beautiful Annette here is quite the artist, as is Lou. You should definitely look at each other's pages. But this is about connecting with your emotions. Paint your grief. Paint your grief. Get it out. I did art sessions. This is my girl, Adele. We did, this was a program I bought through Daily Om called Painting by the Heart. And we ended up doing each lesson, we did different layers onto our spirit, clearly very messy. But where we ended up with these beautiful mandalas, you know, and they're on our walls now. And can you see all the love hearts? That's our love for Aaron. Yeah, you wouldn't notice that if I didn't point it out, but you can paint your grief. Gardening. I think, was it Naomi? Someone mentioned gardening. The garden was my biggest savior during COVID, connecting with the earth, especially during the lockdown. So I did a memorial planting for Aaron for his birthday, and I've done them for his, what I call his tribute days, which is the date of his death. I've had people, that's a lot of his friends, family come over. We had days where people were just planting plants. It's now a garden. That was taken a year ago, so it's bigger now. But that was a really beautiful way to connect. And then everyone that came along and planted a plant, they come and visit. And what we did was we actually, I had paper and they would write Aaron letters. So I've never seen so many plants planted with so much love, you know. So there's letters to Aaron in all these holes. And I had one girlfriend that put crystals in hers, and So there's a lot of love in that garden, and it's just a way to connect with your loss through the garden, but you're moving as well. Fishing, connecting with the people you care about, slowing down, watching the water, meditation. I mean, you can do it anytime, anywhere, right? Yoga. I just want to do a shout out to Paul Denniston. He runs Grief Yoga at griefyoga.com. That is definitely worth looking up. So he, you connect with your grief. It's like, and you feel the grief in your body, but there's sound, movement. You can do it from a chair. You don't have to be very flexible to be able to do that. So Paul Denniston, griefyoga.com. Also, do some writing. Express your feelings. Write them a letter. Write how you feel. Capturing memories. I'm doing a memory journal at the moment. Writing them a letter. Photos, scrapbooking, video compilation, sharing stories. At our tribute nights now, what we do is we have a shot. We sit around the open fire and we have a shot, a butterscotch snaps, because Aaron liked butterscotch snaps, and we do a shot for Aaron, and in memory of Aaron, we have a moment's silence. And then now what we've started doing is sharing stories of Aaron. So we're talking. So I've got all these young kids and they're all talking about Aaron and connecting with their grief. And so it's very powerful. I do want to mention multiple loss very briefly, because when it comes to multiple loss, so example, Viv, you mentioned multiple loss, and I know Mario, I know a number of you have multiple losses. When it comes to multiple losses, you cannot grieve multiple loss at the same time, right? You need to give each loss individual time. This is really important, because what will happen is your mind will play ping pong with you, like whack-a-mole, bang, 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 where it's like, you can't heal your mind. You can't heal when your mind is everywhere. So you'll be thinking about your grief, and then all of a sudden someone else will come in and what about me? And it's very, discombobulating is probably the best word. We can only grieve one person or one thing at a time. Now, grief is very organic. So just allow yourself to go where it needs to go. And if you notice yourself pulling off to another direction, just try to bring yourself back and focus on one. So what we can do, it's what we call artificially compartmentalize. You're like, artificially compartmentalize. So you can give your grief 5 minutes, you can give your grief an hour, you can decide to dedicate a day. So say, for example, I want to grieve for my mum, right? And I'm going to give mum Tuesday night. Now, think of visiting friends. When you have a friend over and someone knocks on the door or calls you, you just say, sorry, I'm busy right now. Can I call you back? I can't talk to you right now. Can I call you on Thursday? It's a little bit the same. So if mum's night's Tuesday night and then Greg comes knocking on the door, boom, what about me? Oh, Greg, honey, your Sunday. I'll come talk to you on Sunday. Yeah. So that's just an easy way to compartmentalize. I hope that's useful. Honey, you're next Thursday. And back and focus. Now, sometimes it may be that your grief needs to be everywhere, and that's okay. You're just feeling the grief, but you won't heal through that. So the healing comes when you break it down and you give each loss the tension, the focus, and the love that it deserves, one at a time. So remember, always, you are always making choices all the time. Everything you do, everything you don't do, even nothing is a choice. You are literally the pilot of your own life. Yeah, it's like you're steering the car. You're in charge, nobody else. So when it comes to supporting people in grief, we have a number of people here that are supporting others in grief, and it's good as grievers to also know how to support others as well. So I'm going to switch to supporting now. People in grief, it often makes other people uncomfortable because we actually don't understand it. So that's why getting this education really helps, right? We don't understand it because it's outside our comfort zone. So notice how it affects you. Do you feel lost for words? Do you want to cheer them up? Do you think they've been grieving for too long? Oh, it's been 6 months. They should be over it by now. I'll give them 6 months and then I'll step in. You know, that's what I used to do. Oh my God, no idea, right? So notice how you're responding. Does their grief trigger emotion in you? Does it frustrate you? Does the reality of their situation scare you? Do you want to just stay away because it's easier? You know, do you find yourself saying, hey, they just need some space, I don't want to bother them? I'm just bringing some awareness to how people can respond. Do you send token messages? How are you? I cannot tell you how many messages I got just saying, how are you? And I'd look at it and I'd go, seriously? How do I even answer that? It's not helpful. Instead of picking up the phone, they'll send me through a message because they don't want to have the grief conversation. It's a cop-out. It's an absolute cop-out. Do you find that you get bored if someone in grief is repeating the same stories over and over and over? Understand, especially if someone has lost a spouse, they will repeat the same stories over and over because they've lost their person that they talk to about the mundane things. They need someone to talk to unpack their day, yeah? And also that repetition, I say the same things over and over. It kind of helps the mind to catch up, you know, because you're trying to process your reality because it doesn't make sense. There's a denial, there's a shock. So, you know, it just can help to listen. You don't have to call them out on it. That's just might be what they need right now. And also, do you feel sorry for them? You know, because you've got to be really careful when we're supporting people who are grieving. Grievers need our empathy. They do not need our sympathy. And if you want to see some more about this, get onto YouTube and look up Brené Brown. Brené Brown, Empathy versus Sympathy. It's very good. It's a good one, isn't it, Annette? Brené Brown, Empathy versus Sympathy. Good video. Another one is Refuge in Grief. If you go to Refuge in Grief, I think it's .com, they've on her homepage, Megan Devine, on her homepage, she's got a really good animated video about being with people in grief. It's very, very useful. I want to mention, because this is important, and most people would not be aware of this, but people who are grieving a loss by suicide, a loss by addiction, mental health, and child loss, they typically, and this is factual data, this is facts, they will typically get less support than other grievers, which is totally wrong because they probably need it more. But these losses defy the natural order of life. So there's an extra added level of discomfort in that, right? Because they defy the natural order of life. The grief with these losses is so brutal that it's a double-edged sword because we get less support. That's important to understand. So grief is about meeting people where they are. It's about listening, just listening, sitting in the silence. There is so much power in the pause. This has been a big learning curve for me because I'm a bit of a talker. Go figure, right? It's been a big learning curve for me. What I've learned is that in grief, it can take our minds time to process an answer. So if someone asks me a question, how am I, or something, it's you've kind of got to find that through the shockness and the numbness. Does that make sense? So it's kind of hard to connect because there's a disconnect, because, you know, the body's a beautiful thing. It disconnects us. It helps to keep us safe, but there's a disconnection. And many people, including myself, are uncomfortable with space in a conversation. So we tend to jump and fill it in, right? I'm working very hard on this. I'm getting better. But this is about giving people a chance to respond, because it actually takes a grief mind time to process information, a little bit longer than normal, yeah? Because it's even hard to access how we feel. So that space is really important. It's not a rush. You've got to let the conversation breathe and just give it some space. So you don't have to have the right thing to say, just slow it down. Sitting in the silence, it's a beautiful way to witness and hold space for somebody. So when it comes to supporting people in grief, it is literally, quite literally, if you get nothing else out of this section, it's about witnessing their pain. Yeah, did you see that? And let me do it again, because it's very cool. Look. It's about witnessing their pain. So begin by acknowledging the loss. Let them know that you're acknowledging it. Let them know that they're seen. Let them know that it actually matters and that you care. There are many people who have avoided me, and it's been easy to do that because of COVID. It's been easy to do that. But I have had a couple of people reach out and say, oh, I didn't want to come because I didn't know what to say. And to be honest, I feel really uncomfortable. And I love that some people have had the courage to say that, because I guarantee you there's many more that haven't come. It's okay to say, I don't even know what to say. Of course you don't know what to say. There's no right words. It's okay to say, I'm at a total loss for words. I can't believe it. How are you doing? Right? That's okay. Now, the best and strongest thing that you can ever say to a griever is, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling today? You need to write that down, because every day is different. And what happens if you ask, how are you? You can have a go in the chat box if you want, but I'm going to keep answering anyway. How are you? Okay. I'm okay. I'm not bad. Good. So. It doesn't invite conversation when you ask someone, how are you? But when you say, how are you feeling today? It's different. Can you see how it's different? Because you're connecting with the emotion. You're also recognizing that every day is different. Because I can feel great one day, and then the next day I can be really, really bad. Every day, it's literally a roller coaster. So just be aware of that. If you do ask and somebody is sharing, don't change the subject. Right? That's happened to me a lot of times, and it's actually quite hurtful. If you're sharing, and if someone is being vulnerable with you and you change the subject. Last weekend, I can't remember what I was talking about. I was talking about grief, driving along, and then my friend's gone, oh, look at the birds. Just like, are you kidding me right now? She couldn't hold she wanted to, but she just didn't have the space. Now, I'm emotionally intelligent enough to get, okay, that's beyond her comfort zone, right? And so I can moderate my conversation based on what I know people can handle, but not everybody can do that. So, don't ask if you don't want to hear the answer. Breaking that connection, changing the subject, it can feel insincere. It can break the connection. If it's getting too deep for you, that's okay. Just say, gee, that must be really tough. You don't have to have the answers. Just witness the pain. Just say, that must be so tough. I can't even begin to understand what you're going through. Yeah. So having pain witnessed is about making the loss real. There is no greater gift you can give someone in grief than to ask them about their loved one and then truly listen. It builds connection. It helps them feel less alone. It validates the pain. It validates the loss. It shows that their loved one's remembered. A big fear for grievers is that they'll be forgotten. So, mention them. Just, if something comes in your mind and you remember a story of them, just say, oh, I just had this memory come in, and, Ted did this and this is how I felt. And, it's nice. There is no greater gift you can give someone in grief than to ask them about their loved one and then to truly listen. Now, some people will not be able to have that conversation if they're not coping with their grief. So you've got to be guided by the person because everyone's grief is different. But, you know, give them the space, ask them questions and then listen. So witnessing people's grief, it's about meeting them where they are now, wherever they are. It doesn't matter where they are, right? We don't come to them with an agenda. It's not our agenda, just meeting them where they are. So a really great question to ask yourself is, how can I sit with them? How can I sit with them? If you're wanting to support someone in grief, how can I sit with them? And how can I be, I love this, how can I be the one person who is making them feel that they're doing it right? Because they'll be judging their grief. How can I be that one person who is making them feel that they're doing it right? I will often say when I'm supporting people in grief, of course you feel that way. How could you not be feeling that way? Of course, yes, that's very normal. Yeah. So you don't have to have the right thing to say. You don't need to fix anything. Oops, I missed the last line. You don't need to fix anything and you don't need answers and solutions. Don't say you understand how they feel. You say, I can't even begin to understand how you feel. I don't understand how other bereaved parents feel. Everyone's experience is different. Yeah. And they'll be at different stages at different times. So it's impossible to understand how someone else is feeling, even if you've had the same loss. But show you care enough to have the conversation. It's important. Now, if you are supporting a dying person, and I know this is relevant, you need to remember your own self-care. You need to do nice things for yourself. And you need to support yourself so you can support them, right? Because you need to put the same amount of kindness into yourself as you're putting into your person. Otherwise, it is not sustainable. And if you don't, it's likely you'll end up sick or diseased yourself. Now, I want to do a shout out here to the Australian Doula College. The Australian Doula College. So Lou and I have met Liz and Renee from the Australian Doula College through our Grief Educators program. They have a fantastic program. They have end-of-life doulas that help people who have a loved one who is transitioning. It's called end-of-life doulas. So they will sit down with the family and ask the questions that the family hasn't asked. Have those conversations that are typically too difficult to have. Yeah, and they have resources, they have all sorts of information there. So the Australian Doula College, fabulous support there. All right, so now I'm going to move on. We are moving into the last section. I'm going to talk quickly about processing emotions. Then I'm going to talk about the online support group and how working with me, the type of work that I do. And then we're going to finish with the group self-directed healing session that is focused specifically on grief. So at this point, I imagine we're going to finish up about 10 past 12. Yeah, about 10 minutes late. I trust that's okay, but just so you know. So we are living in a society that has learnt to numb and avoid our pain. Like we do not know how to process our emotions. Now, you may or may not know this, but Australia, this is a statistic that you might want to write down. Australia has the second highest rate in the world for prescribing for depression and anxiety. Right? Australia has the second highest rate in the world for prescribing prescription medication for depression and anxiety. Now that is ridiculous and that is not okay. You know, lucky country, right? No idea. Like seriously, Big Pharma is making an absolute mock out of grief and trauma. Very passionate about this. I believe that we are way too quick to prescribe medications. I could have gone to the doctor. They would have given me meds. I could go to the doctor today. They will give me meds. I don't need them. That is the model of the world that we live in, unfortunately, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Please do not get me wrong. There are absolutely times when medication is necessary. That is not what I'm saying at all, but we are way too quick to prescribe. And we are in a society that has raised us to believe that boys don't cry, that we're too emotional, that it's not okay to be angry, right? And it's not even true. We are very uncomfortable with being sad. We don't like feeling sad. Sad is a very useful emotion. Anger is a very useful emotion. You know, anger and sadness, they're often regarded as negative emotions. They are unwelcome. People avoid them. They suppress them. They do anything they can to not feel them. And yet, they are part of the human experience, and they are very healthy emotions. They are there for a reason. They need to be honored, and they need to be witnessed and respected and felt. The challenge is that many people don't know how to feel them in a healthy, resourceful way. You know, they might have an anger outburst. And so people see violence and they think anger is bad. There are many ways that I've shared with you already: dancing, walking, punching a punching bag, screaming into your pillow, you know, writing a letter and swearing your head off and then burning it. You know, there's so many other ways that we can feel our emotions and express our pain. So please understand, your emotions are there for a reason. They actually need to be felt. So the emotional pain gets trapped in your body. And here's another really alarming statistic for you. The Center for Disease Control in America, CDC, states that 85% of disease is caused by trapped emotion. Right? CDC, Center for Disease Control in America, states that 85% of disease is caused by trapped emotions. And there's other data out there that says 90%. The key tip here is to learn how to feel the emotions. You don't want to be avoiding and suppressing, because what happens is it then manifests physically. I see this over and over and over and over and over. So don't avoid and suppress your pain. It's about giving yourself permission to feel. When you get physical pain or aches in your body, ask yourself, what's my body saying to me right now? Listen. If your grief had a voice, what would it be saying right now? There is power in that conversation. If my grief had a voice, what would it be saying to me right now? And let your grief speak. So my work is very much about exploring and finding natural ways to feel. It's about bringing more awareness and holistic practices into healing, feeling, right? Throughout the world now, there is a lot of holistic healing modalities that are becoming very readily available. It is time. The world's beginning to shift, you know. It's like Western's catching up with Eastern. I knew in my grief I needed help, but I also knew I didn't need medication. I knew going to a psychologist wasn't even going to come close to being enough for me. I do see a psychologist. I still see her. She's wonderful. From time to time, I reach out when I need that, but it's not enough, right? I needed more. I needed to be able to go in and really feel this. And I've done enough work to know the power of these holistic healing modalities. It's about naturally processing these overwhelmingly intense emotions rather than using drugs to numb them and avoid them and suppress them, because that's what drugs do. They just numb the pain. They keep you stuck in the pain longer. You're not dealing with the pain. You're masking the pain. The pain's not going away. You are literally masking the pain. And so I have learned through this experience to actually embrace the pain of loss. It's not been easy. That's why I call us courageous grievers. It's not been easy. But I wouldn't be here. Couldn't show up here today like this 2 years after my son's death if I hadn't done this work, right? I try not to fight it, because that just causes more friction in my body. Now, grief is a very heavy emotion, like literally. For those of you that are familiar, anyone familiar with David Hawkins' work? Yeah, one nod, not many. David Hawkins has a map of consciousness, and there are different, it's the literal mathematical weight of emotions. And so grief, shame, guilt, and apathy are the 4 heaviest emotions in the body. And there's an inertia. There's a force, weak, heavy, dense energy that goes with those heavy emotions in the body. And so when I feel that heaviness build up, which I do regularly, I know it's time for me to actively do some grief work. That's my signal. Our bodies actually talk to us. We do need to listen. And so I ask you now, are you listening, or are you avoiding and suppressing? What are you doing? If you're sad, be sad. If you're angry, be angry. If you're exhausted, be exhausted. I've got videos. I've got a YouTube channel at Christy Roberts Coaching. I'll share the links for all that later, and they're in the ebook as well, where I've got a video on different tips for feeling sad, different tips for feeling angry. I did them a long time ago, but they're still relevant, still good information. So you can go onto YouTube and look me up at Christy Roberts Coaching. So emotions are fleeting in nature, even in grief. But what happens if we don't process those emotions and feel them is they build up and they turn into moods. So emotions are fleeting in nature, like the roller coaster, but moods, what happens is if we don't feel our emotions, because they're fleeting, they turn into moods. And moods is overwhelm. Moods is stress. Moods is depression. Moods is anxiety, the guilt, the shame. This is where it builds up and we're not expressing it and feeling it and processing it. So those emotions that are fleeting in nature, they shift into moods. So that's important to understand. Like waves, they'll go up, they'll go down. We need to feel what we need to feel. This is a very simple model that I learned at the Coaching Institute that they use to process emotions. And self-directed healing just takes this to a completely different level. But at a very basic level, name what you're feeling. What is the emotion or sensation? Some people are not connected to emotion, but they might be connected to the sensations. So what is the emotion or sensation you're feeling in your body? Give it a name. Where am I feeling it in my body? And allow yourself to feel that emotion fully. So move into it, move into the emotion. The third step is to actually fully own it. And then what happens when you fully engage and fully own an emotion, it does pass. So about self-directed healing. So self-directed healing, this is a bit of a definition for you. Self-directed healing is a revolutionary and fast healing modality that works with deep emotional pain, like grief, like trauma, anger, overwhelm, anxiety, guilt, shame, addictions, and more. And what we do is we work with deep emotional pain and limiting beliefs, and we process them physically, energetically through the physical body, right? And so, for me, I went in and I had all this chest pain, all this throat pain. And I did a session 3 weeks after Aaron died. And I kid you not, hour and a half and it was gone. I literally biologically shifted the chemicals in my body. My speech that was thick cleared. The shock lifted. It was absolutely incredible, absolutely remarkable. And so it really does work, and it works on many different levels. It works emotionally. It works mentally, it works physically, spiritually, consciously, unconsciously, and super consciously. So we are working all the different levels, and we are integrating and getting congruence through the body, because sometimes the heart will feel one thing, but the head's telling you something else. We can match that up. The work that we do gets that alignment, gets the congruency, releases the friction in the body, in the physical body, and we measure everything. We measure it. It's tangible. You will see the changes from before and after. So that's a bit about processing emotions. We're sort of starting to wind up now. I've covered a lot. I've talked about grief. We've talked about what it is, how it's many different things. We've gone through the grief timeline and the different stages of grief. I've given you so many tips. I couldn't have packed anything more in here, even if I wanted. I had to keep deleting stuff even yesterday. But I really am here to serve you. I want to give you as much information as you can get, and value for your time, because that's important. I've given you a heap of tips of supporting people in grief, and I've talked about processing emotions. So now let me just talk a little bit about, before we head into the healing, I just want to talk to you briefly about how the type of work that I do, a bit about creating change and the next steps of working with me. So about creating change, you find me at christyrobertscoaching.com. christyrobertscoaching.com. I do lots of different things. I do grief work. I also work with leaders. I run workshops in businesses. I do the self-directed healing. I do leadership coaching. So if you're interested in one-to-one coaching, self-directed healing, or a grief education workshop for yourself, for your organization, for a group, please reach out to me at christyrobertscoaching.com. This is my YouTube channel. I'm working very hard to get subscribers on there. It's a tough gig to get subscribers, but I've got a lot of videos on there, a lot of different information. So go on, it's at Christy Roberts Coaching, and subscribe. And there's lots of free content on there available for you. So that's a very active channel. You can select this bell. Can you see the bell here? You can select the bell and then you get notified whenever I release a new video. My work is about tapping into our full potential and getting results faster. I am a certified results coach. Actually, Rob's a certified results coach as well. We did that together in Sydney, didn't we? My work is all about living our best life in spite of life, in spite of the challenges that life presents. And so if you feel that you are stuck, most of my one-to-one clients, they're typically stuck in like a Groundhog Day. They come to me because they are grieving, because they're stuck, because they're procrastinating, or because they don't have a good work-life balance. That's sort of my typical client. It's important to understand and appreciate, that time, this is the different seasons, it stands still for no one. You might know that you need help and you're not getting it, or there might be someone you're working with that needs help, and they're not getting it, but what happens is they just stay stuck there. You stay stuck because it takes action, it takes energy, and it takes courage to do the work. So like the doors show here, time keeps moving, the months pass, the seasons pass. And if you don't take that action and do the work, what happens is you get stuck, you stay the same. But the months and the years don't. They continue on no matter what you do. So this is really important. You don't want to end up stuck in that barren landscape. You don't want that barren life, you don't want, there is a difference between being happy and avoiding sadness, right? You don't want to be in the same place 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, because life is precious. It's one of my biggest learnings. And we all know that way too well, your life matters. So make it count. When someone you love dies, your life doesn't end. It's just a new beginning. It's a transitioning time. So, you're here today. Let's keep it going. Don't let it stop. So this is my exciting announcement. I'm pretty pumped. I am launching an online grief support group. So let me show you. I've got like a 1-minute video that I'm going to share with you. Let me just find it. All right, can you hear that? It's going to start playing. Thumbs up. All right. No, wrong one. Yep, that's. Hang on, bear with me. All right, can you see that? It's not showing that you can see it. Let me stop the share. And I'm going to start that again. I'm going to there. Can you see that slide? Great, okay. It hasn't got the box around it that it normally has, so that's a bit strange. All right. Can you see that properly? Yeah, great. All right. Okay. So as you can see, the online grief support group, it's about learning to release the suffering and discovering healthy ways to process your pain and your grief. It is a community designed for courageous grievers. It is not for everybody. It includes grief education, coaching, and self-directed healing. Plus, I'll be sharing loads of practical tips, strategies, giving you space to talk about your grief, and giving your grief the attention and the focus that it needs. So in the group, you will connect with yourself, you will connect with your loved ones, as in people who have passed. I will do activities to help you find meaning and bring them with you, and you will connect with other grievers. Doesn't matter what stage your grief is at. You'll learn meaningful ways to honour your loved ones and your grief so that you can actually begin to learn and remember with more love than pain, because that's the goal, right? It's about continuing to heal and beginning to learn to live fully again. So what's included? There are 6 90-minute weekly Zoom meetings. So this is a 6-week program. It's a comprehensive 6-week program. At the end of each 90-minute meeting, I will keep it open so people can chat and connect, but that is optional. I will build a supportive grief community. We will be there. I'm capping class sizes because I really want to get the maximum impact to build that community and that sense of support and connection. So I will be capping at 16. Also, each week we'll have a different weekly topic. There will be grief education, and it's going to be designed to actually improve your understanding of grief, improve your understanding of your own grief and how it actually affects you. There will be activities, there will be homework, and you will be connecting with both yourself and your loved one. There will be professional group coaching, and we will be doing healings throughout. Now, it is $297 Australian, so I'm keeping it very affordable because I actually want it to be able to reach as many people as I can. So I realise a number of you are in the room today here to support others in professional capacity. So this is just something else you can refer your clients to. Yeah, part of your network so that you can give them that additional support if you feel that they need it. So that cost, that's it. No gimmicks. I don't do all the crap, right? I don't work like that. So that is the cost. There's no hidden costs. I don't do that. I am keeping it affordable because I want it accessible. So the results that you can expect is you will connect and understand your grief more. You will get a stronger sense of direction and purpose. You will find personal growth and fulfillment throughout. You will discover healthy ways to connect and process your pain. You will have better emotional intelligence, better emotional balance, right? And you will reconnect with more love and more meaning in your grief. So what I'm doing is I'm offering a free discovery call for everybody here. Let me bring my chat back up because it's disappeared. Let me pop in, I don't know if yeah. So let me just pop that in there. There's 2 links there. One is to book into my calendar if you want to talk to me about this in more detail. That's just a free call where we can go into a bit more detail, talk about what you might need. You might be looking at one-to-one coaching, for example, or might not be interested in group work or vice versa. Doesn't matter. And I do have a landing page for the online grief support group. So that's up. So there's a link there where you can go in to get more information about that as well. And you can also use that link to share it with other people. So please do that. So I have cleared my diary. I don't normally clear my diary for a Saturday afternoon. And I have cleared Monday. So there is space this afternoon. I've got a couple appointments there where you can book in, and I've also got space Monday that I've cleared. So go in and book in a one-to-one call if you want to know a little bit more about any of this, or talk to me or have questions that you want to ask me. So the idea of, what was that? Oh, that's where we're literally just shining the spotlight on you. You know, what are the best steps for you moving forward? What's the best place? Now, this group and one-to-one coaching is not for you if you are not prepared to do the work. It's not for you if you're happy where you are right now. It is not for you if you're not serious about living a better life. It's not for you if you're not interested in those things. But it is for you if you are stuck and you want to get moving again. It is for you if you are feeling alone in your grief. And it is for you if you want to still live a good life despite your loss, because that's tricky, very tricky. If you feel stuck in a hole and you're not sure of the best way to get out, then this is a really fabulous option for you to get out of the hole, to get you moving again. It's not a big commitment. It's 6 weeks. If your body is struggling with the stress, the pain of your grief, this is going to help you. And if you feel alone and you want to connect with others that actually get it and that are having similar, no one's going to have your experience. It's going to be different, but similar experiences, this is a good fit for you. So I've got heaps of testimonials. I'm not going to spend time going through those, but they are there. They are on my website on the testimonials page. There's lots there. So feel free to go on if that's something that you're interested in, but that's all there. So you can book through that calendar link now. I have cleared that space in my diary. So hop on. I really encourage you to have that conversation. You've got nothing to lose. It's free. So the online grief support group, just to reiterate, it's 6 90-minute weekly meetings. It's on Zoom. It's group coaching. It's healing, activities and homework. And this is building a community where you will belong. Yeah. And it is just $297. No gimmicks, no hidden costs, nothing. Now, I do need to mention it is limited because the class sizes are capped at 16. And I also need to mention that if you are interested in working with me one-to-one, I only have limited space for that. You know, there's only so many hours in a day, so I can only fit in a number of clients at any one time, and I am nearly at capacity. And what happens when I reach capacity is then I have to wait list. So guys, now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we are going to do a self-directed healing process. So if anyone needs to drop off the call, that's fine. I apologize because we have gone slightly over, but there's just so much in there I have to get through. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the tempo, and I'm going to lead you through a self-directed healing process. And then at the end of this, I'm going to stop and stay here as long as you need me to stay to answer any questions that you may have. Okay. So I really want you to just maximize this opportunity to feel your emotions. Like I said, tears are a beautiful thing. So if you feel that emotion coming up, just let it coming up. Before we get started, I just want to check in because it's important to create an environment that's safe. And I'm conscious that you may or not be alone wherever you are. So if you don't feel that you're in a safe space to be alone and to cry or be angry or whatever it is, because we say things out loud and all that in self-directed healing, it's very cool. I just encourage you, if you're not in a safe and private space, that you can do this internally as well, just for the sake of today. If you're working with me one-to-one, I would have you saying things out loud. So I do encourage you all to stay on mute. Keep your cameras on. When I say things out loud, say it out loud, like really connect in with it, because the more you connect in with it, the stronger it is. And doing these group healings, oh my God, there's so much power and energy in the room. It becomes quite palpable. So really, really tap into that. Don't worry about your camera being on because no one's going to be watching you. They're all going to have their eyes closed. Okay, we're not here watching each other. You will be on your own journey. So you will literally just be following my voice. So just follow with my voice, everybody. And I'd like you to start by just gently closing your eyes. Or if you'd prefer, you can just lower them. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, that's fine. Just whatever feels safe for you. So I'd like you to start by just relaxing into your chair or on the floor, wherever you feel comfortable, just relaxing. And just focus on getting really comfortable. You might wiggle your shoulders, just relaxing into that position that you've chosen. And we're going to start by breathing in through our nose and out through the mouth, just really gently, just breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, and just noticing how you're feeling in your body. Just noticing if there's any stress, noticing if there's any tension, noticing if there's anything sitting anywhere in your body at all. And just breathing into that, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, and just really feeling it. Notice what's happening in your body, starting to listen to your body, letting your body talk to you. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, and really connecting with your breath. Just this is a deep breath. This is down into the diaphragm. It's natural, but we're just allowing that oxygen to just flow through your body. Really connecting with that breath. And now I'd like you to just think about your life. Just think about your life for a moment, all the ups and the downs, and allowing some sad events and memories to just pop into your mind. Events and memories about things that carry grief for you. Things that have haunted you or lived with you for a long time. Let yourself go to a memory. Whatever comes up is always perfect. And just go there. Just be there. Just replay this moment in your mind. Connecting in with your heart. What's your heart saying to you? How is your heart feeling? If you're feeling lonely, feeling sad, just feel those feelings. They're just there to help you. If you're feeling angry, then be angry. If you're feeling guilty, feel the guilt. Say to yourself, it's all my fault. Notice the color of the energy in your heart. Is it darker? Is it like a heavier energy? Is it foggy? Is it dense? Is it lighter? Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth and really feeling it. That's it. Just let any emotion comes up that needs to come up. And I want you to now think about your grief and the emotion connected to your grief and pain in this moment. And if you're not connecting fully out loud, then just say, I miss you. I miss you. If you have multiple losses, focus your loss on one person. I miss you. Allowing your grief a voice, allowing your grief some space to just feel and breathe. Whatever is coming up with you, coming up for you, you just go with it. It's always perfect. Our bodies speak to us. It is time to listen. So feel that pain in your body. Take some breaths. Take a deep breath. I want you to give your pain a voice. I want you to just say it out loud and own it. Now you're on mute, so just own this. Whatever this grief emotion is, whatever you're feeling, I want you to just embrace it. I want you to say it to yourself in the back of your head. I want you to say it out loud. If it's sadness, I want you to say, I'm so sad. If it's anger, I want you to say, I'm angry. If you feel guilty, then say, it's all my fault. It's all my fault. Just say it. Say it out loud. This is important to connect verbally. This is another sense in the body. It makes it even more powerful. So just say it out loud. Whatever it is, I'm in despair. I feel lost. I feel abandoned. I'm all alone. I miss you. I miss you. I miss you. If you're too much in your head, focus on your heart and just let yourself say it from your heart. Let your heart speak right now. Whatever it is, I'm sad. I'm angry. I miss you. The next thing I want you to do now is to ask yourself, where am I feeling this emotion in my body? Where am I feeling this emotion in my body? Is it in your chest? Is it in your stomach? Do you feel a bit sick when you say it? Is it in your throat? Is it in your head, your shoulders? I'm sad. I'm sad. I'm so sad. Just feel it. Love yourself enough to let yourself feel it. Whatever that emotion is for you, say it out loud. I'm angry. It doesn't matter. We can all feel different things at the same time. Do this for you, nobody else. And if you're not feeling it, that's okay. Just try saying, I'm really sad. The next thing I want you to do, if you've found it in your body, then what I want you to do next is just sit in it and feel it in your body. Take all your consciousness into your physical body and feel that emotion sitting in your body. That's it. I'm really sad. I'm really, really sad. Whatever it is, just keep saying it, whatever it is for you. Now, I want you to give it a color. If there's a color, give it a color and let your attention go there. Is it brown? Is it black? Is it red? Is it round? Is it foggy? Is it dense? Is it heavy? Whatever it is, just feel that and breathe even deeper, just holding that space for yourself. And I want you to let this feeling grow. Instead of trying to get rid of it or breathe it out, just let it go, let it grow. I want you to actually see if you can get this feeling stronger. If it's a 6 out of 10, see if you can get it to an 8. If it's a 10 out of 10, see if you can get it to a 12. And let's do this. You are safe. This is a safe space right now. Let's do this together. We are one here right now. Let's love each other enough in this room right now to go a bit deeper into our pain today. Your grief. I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm alone. I miss you. Whatever it is, just embrace it. Just feel it. Breathe. And if it's a 6 or 7 out of 10, I want you to see if you can get it higher. Give yourself permission to feel and heal yourself completely. See if you can get the feeling, the grief, the sadness, the guilt, the anger a little bit stronger. See if you have the courage. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. If you're getting tingling in your fingers or anywhere else, that's fine. It's just energy moving in your body. Just see if you have the courage to let this in. I miss you. I want you to say it out loud. I miss you. You're doing great, everybody. Let's keep feeling it. Let's see if we can get this a little bit higher today. Let's see if we can push it up to an 8, a 9, an 11, whatever it is for you. See if you can get it higher. And if you can't, that's okay. Just stay with it and hold on to it as long as you can, feeling it and honoring yourself enough fully to do this today. You might notice the energy moving in your body. It might start to change color. I can feel a lot of energy moving. I can feel it moving towards my shoulders and head now. So just let the energy move if that's what it's doing. Wherever it's moving in your body, I'm feeling it going down to my feet. So some of you, I know you're feeling it going through your feet right now. I'm just connecting with you. So just feel that wherever it's going, just let it go. It's just energy releasing. That's all it is. And just keep breathing. And let it hurt. If it needs to hurt, just let it hurt. That's it. I miss you. I can feel it. I'm feeling it with you. Just breathe in and feel it. That's it. Just let it really peak. Love yourself enough to really connect with this, really feel this emotion. How much you miss them, how lonely you feel, how angry you are that they are gone. Whatever it is that you're feeling in your grief right now, feel the pain of it now. And I want you to see that you, however old you were when they died and left you, the younger you that you're so angry with, just see her, see him. The older you that's so sad, see her, see him. And I'll need you now as you're feeling that younger you's pain to step into that memory. Even if it's now, even if it's in 11 months ago, doesn't matter when it is, just step back, go back in time when they left. The you are now, step back in time. You're going to step back into that memory. See that younger you, that mum, that partner, that friend, that younger you's pain, who's feeling so sad, so much grief and despair. And all I want you to do is go and give him or her a hug. And I want you to tell them, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I want you to see how hard this was for her or for him, how much they are hurting inside and how much they just needed love. So feel the love, embrace the love, feel the embrace. And I want you to give that younger you love. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, just feeling love. Stay feeling it in your body. Stay connected to your body. Really feel this. Give them a big hug and tell them it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. That's it. Just comfort them until they start to feel a little bit better. Tell him or her you love them and you're always going to be here for them. Breathe in your love. Breathe in your love. If your love has a color, just let that color come in, the pink, the green, the purple, the red, whatever that rainbow, it doesn't matter. Just breathe in your love. And now I want you to come back. I want you to come back into your body. Slowly just breathing into your body. Viv, you're great. That's just the energy in your throat. You just cough. You just do what you need to do. It's just the energy releasing. That's what the energy does. And I want you to just notice what's happening. Just notice what's happening to that emotion now, just feeling that fully. Has it moved? Is it in the same place? Is it the same color? Is it heavier? Is it lighter? Just notice. Just notice what you're noticing. Is it still up at a high number or has it come down? Just notice what you're noticing. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just keep breathing. Now we're just doing this gently today because I'm not one-to-one with you. You know, I'm not here with you one-to-one. I don't have you in front of me to hold this space individually for you. So I want you to just gently connect with yourself again in this moment. Connecting with your body, just feeling that energy. If it's in your throat, wherever it is, just feeling that through your legs, your arms, wherever it is, just noticing what you're noticing in your body. And you'll notice the energy starting to shift. You'll notice it's starting to leave. And you might feel the energy leaving out through the tips of your fingers or out through your toes. Sometimes it goes out through our head. Sometimes we cough. Sometimes we breathe. Sometimes we burp. It doesn't matter. It's just energy, just allowing the energy to do whatever it needs to do. So a few deep breaths now. You know, the fact is we all have sadness. We all have grief. We all have anger. We all carry grief, guilt, shame, but we don't need to hold on to it forever. So start to just relax your body a little bit. Just let the tension start to leave your body. You might like to wiggle your shoulders around. I'd like to invite you to have a little bit of a stretch. You might like to just reach up your arms if you want to, if that feels right for you in this moment. You might like to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Let yourself to just start gently coming back, just noticing the temperature in the room, just noticing the chair where you're sitting. Just breathing, continuing to allow that energy to integrate. I know for some of you then that was pretty heavy, that was pretty deep. So just allowing that integration, that release to continue. I'm just doing a really gentle introduction with you today, you know, in person. Some of you know this. I do go a lot harder. I'm just conscious that you're not in front of me today. So now I just want you, as you're coming back to the room, I want you to say it again. I miss you. I'm sad, I'm angry, whatever it is for you, and just say it from the heart and just notice. I want you to check in and see, is it stronger than it was before? Has it released a little bit for you? Has it gotten a little bit lighter? Whatever it is for you, it's okay. Just allowing the energy to keep integrating, keep releasing. Can you feel the emotion starting to move and leave your body? I just want to see a sign of hands. Is anyone still in high emotion? Or has it shifted? Okay, still a bit high, still a bit high. So just continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just bringing yourself back today. Just knowing that you can book in a one-to-one. I've got space in my diary if we just need to go a bit harder with you this afternoon to clear this fully for you. Who feels like they've had some emotional release? Nice, nice. Are you feeling a bit lighter than when you started? So just relax. Just as you're slowly bringing your awareness back into the room, I just encourage you to have a little bit of water if you've got some water nearby. It's important to stay hydrated. That was so great. Now, look, I know this is quite confronting work and it can feel very challenging. It takes a lot of courage to do this work. So I just want to honor each and every one of you for staying and doing this with me today, and for honoring your grief and for giving your grief some space and just letting it to breathe a little bit, because it's tough. It's not easy. Yeah. When it comes to self-directed healing, honestly, it has literally saved my life. You know, I can honestly say it works so fast, shifting, moving, clearing through those emotions, feeling the beliefs, challenging the beliefs, feeling them physically through the body, energetically, like allowing them to release and not holding on, not keeping them trapped and stuck in your body, resulting in physical symptoms. It's powerful work. So I just want to thank you all. Well done, everybody. And when you're ready, I just invite you to come back to the room if you're not on video, and just bringing you back into the room. So just taking your time and slowly coming back. I'm going to go back into sharing my screen just to finalize the slides for today. So are you seeing the one slide with the love heart? Anyone not seeing that? Great. Okay. So I want you to remember that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. This is one of my favorite quotes from David Kessler. Pain is inevitable in grief, but the suffering is this additional layers, the guilt, the shame, the stories, the limiting beliefs, the stuff that our mind makes up, the what ifs, the if onlys. That's optional. We don't need to get stuck in that stuff. There is absolutely ways to process through that and feel that. You know, your loss is one aspect of your life, but your life is so much more than your loss. And bringing it back to love, you know, grief is the price we pay for love. We would not grieve if we did not love. So grief is our love. And your loved one is so much more than their death. You know, this is about honoring their life. So the journey of the grief is to find our way through the pain to the love. It's a beautiful way to kind of finish this session and bring it back full circle, yeah? Back to the love. It's where we need to be, connecting with that. So just breathing in. So I'm finishing up now. So I'm just going to remind you, especially for those of you, if you're still feeling deep emotion, book in for that discovery call and I will help you through that now. So the link is in the chat, but you can also go to christyrobertscoaching.com and go into the contacts. I want to mention that I am getting more active with running events. So if ever you're curious about what events I might have on, as time goes on and I build the landing pages and the tech and the structure behind, more and more will show up there. So that's where you'll find it on my events page. You'll find me on social media at Christy Roberts Coaching. So active on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. My virtual assistants just made me sign up for, is it Twitter? No, what is it called? TikTok. Yeah, so I've now got a TikTok account. Nothing's on there yet, but that'll be active soon. So one thing that I am going to do, this is a pilot. This is the second time I've run this program. So feedback is really important because I really want this to really land and help. The more people I can help and the better this is, the more people we can reach, you know, the more people we can help. So if you've got value today, I will, when I send out the ebook, I'll also be including some questions for feedback. And I really encourage you to leave a testimonial if you've got value out of today, because that's going to help me you know, it'll help you pay it forward, but it helps me promote it to other people if I can have some testimonials, because this is a new program that I'm running. So I guess in conclusion for me, you know, this work is so incredibly meaningful, and I'm doing this because I actually want to make a difference, not just to myself, not just to Adele, not just to Aaron, but in the world. You know, this work doesn't remove my grief. My grief is still there. This work doesn't bring Aaron back, but it is a great way that I can honor him. It is a great way that I can honor myself. And through this loss and honoring my love for him, you know, I can help other people navigate this really uncertain, brutal, and rocky terrain. So ultimately, it's just so incredibly rewarding for me to be sitting here in front of you and for you to show up today. So I thank you all for being here. I'm going to take questions now. You know, at the end of the day, I am incredibly sorry you're here. For those of you that are grieving, you know, this is not an easy gig, but I'm pleased that you found me at the same time, because getting this information and this education, it's incredibly empowering. You know, for those of you in grief, much love and support, and remember to be kind to yourself during this challenging time of transition, because this is a transition. For those of you that are in leadership, coaching and healing roles, thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you. You're an absolute blessing to us all, and much love and support to each and every one of you. So thank you all for your time today. Remember to book in for the discovery call so that we can continue our conversation, and take care. So I'm going to close the slides and I am going to move to questions. So